listen to me and allow me to remind you who I am. I'm a registered independent. I'm not fond of either side. There are some things that I'm conservative about. There are some things I'm liberal about. I'm primarily fiscal about my money, taxes. I can't stand states like New York, New Jersey, and California to take all your damn money in taxes.
Bro, same.
There's too many people that don't understand why the government is shut down right now, so I'm gonna try to make this easy. A few months back, they passed something called the Big Beautiful Bill. The Big Beautiful Bill cut $1 trillion worth of Medicaid funding over the next 10 years. And they're saving that $1 trillion in a couple of different ways. First, they introduce work requirements for able-bodied citizens. This means if you can't prove that you're disabled, then you're required to work to receive Medicaid. You have to prove that you've either worked or volunteered or studied for a minimum of 80 hours a month. That's only 20 hours a week. Second, they made it to where you have to verify your qualification every 6 months. Before the Big Beautiful Bill, people could apply for Medicaid and then just remain on it. But now people are required to re-qualify every 6 months, proving that they put in that time at work or volunteering or studying. But if they'd rather just sit at home and be lazy rather than being a productive member of society while they're perfectly capable of being a productive member of society, then they'll lose their benefits. And that's how it saves the government money for healthcare to be used towards people that actually need it. So that's the first way that the Big Beautiful Bill is working towards saving $1 trillion over the next 10 years.
Donald Trump and Republicans have shut the government down because they don't want to provide healthcare to working class Americans.
All right, let's break this down. First off, Donald Trump and the Republicans did not shut down the government. The clean continuing resolution passed in the House. Donald Trump is ready to sign it. Democrats are using the filibuster in the Senate to stop this from happening. The filibuster essentially means that senators can end debate on a topic indefinitely. And in order to break past the filibuster, you need to have 60 votes in the Senate. So Democrats are quite literally causing a shutdown because they want more spending on healthcare. But again, a clean continuing resolution is already passed in the House. Democrats are blocking it in the Senate. When I say clean, it essentially just means that they're going to continue to fund the government at its current levels just to keep the lights on. No policy change is not adding anything, just keeping it clean to keep people paid and keep the government operating. Democrats are saying no to that, and they're trying to use that as leverage to get policy changes because Congress controls the purse. So they're using this continuing resolution as leverage to get what they want. They're trying to jam their policies into a resolution to keep the government running. But now that I've said that, let's go back to what Hakeem Jeffries said again. I addressed the first part. Democrats have essentially stuck a piece of metal in the gears that were turning and are now blaming the gears. But let's get to the second half of what he said.
Donald Trump and Republicans have shut the government down because they don't want to provide health care to working class Americans.
That's a lie. We already addressed how they didn't shut the government down. Second off, he does want health care for working class Americans. They're talking about the cuts over the next 10 years that are happening with Medicaid. Now, mind you, around 90% of people are still expected to be covered. Do you know who the #1 target of these cuts are? Able-bodied adults aged 19 through 64 without disabilities, dependents, or other exemptions. They are increasing work requirements for these individuals in order for them to qualify. If you don't have disabilities, children, or any other exemptions, why shouldn't you be working at least 20 to 30 hours a week to contribute to our society? You're just supposed to be able to sit back, not do anything, and then reap the rewards from other people's work? So no, Donald Trump very much wants working class people to be insured. He doesn't want people mooching off the system, and I don't blame him. Also, of our federal budget, about 13% of it goes to just interest on debt. Just for context, Medicare is 14% of our budget. So 13% of our budget is going to interest payments, and that rate is accelerating. So the government has to do something to get this interest under control. If they don't get interest payments under control, our government will spend more and more money on interest payments, and we won't have money for all these entitlement programs or our defense. So the government has to figure out a way to take on less debt and having more money to take on interest payments. The money has to come from somewhere. They're looking after the financial health of our nation.
I'm still doing a little bit more research on this topic as the video goes on, but if all that stuff is true and the Democratic Party really wanted to allocate our tax money to stuff that is completely irrelevant to the American people, even detrimental, then it makes sense that the Republicans would stand up and say no. It seems like the Democrats have an America last agenda, or it seems like Republicans have an America First agenda?
To the American people who are watching, the reason your government is shut down at this very minute is because, despite the fact that the overwhelming majority of congressional Republicans and even a few moderate Democrats supported opening the government, the Chuck Schumer AOC wing of the Democratic Party shut down the government because they said to us, we will open the government, but only if you give billions of dollars of funding for health care for illegal aliens. That's a ridiculous proposition.
The Democrats have said that they are ready to get the government reopened if the Republicans will meet their demands. Just what are those demands so that we can start paying our military again and get the WIC program back open so mothers can feed their babies? $3 million to be put back in the budget to spend on circumcisions and vasectomies in Zambia. $500,000 for electric buses in Rwanda. $3.6 million for pastry cooking classes and dance focus groups for male prostitutes in Haiti. $6 million for media organizations for the Palestinians, $800,000 for transgender people in Nepal, $900,000 for social media mentorship in Serbia, $4.2 million for LGBTQ people in the Western Balkans and Uganda, not to mention $500 million for NPR and free healthcare for illegal immigrants, or as Maxine Waters says, for all people. So yeah, Democrats are willing to let our military go without pay, mothers and babies to go without their WIC program, not to mention put Floridians at risk during hurricane season of disrupting their flood insurance until they get funding for LGBTQ issues, circumcisions, and pastry classes in other parts of the world. But at least Democrats are consistent in their America Last agenda.
But let me ask you, because you say this is a Republican shutdown, but it's Democratic senators who are withholding their votes on what is called a clean resolution. That means no strings attached, which is something, quite frankly, Leader, that you and other Democrats have advocated for in the past. Take a look.
You do not use the threat of shutting down government to try to advance your policy agenda.
First thing that the House has to do is pass a clean 6-week CR.
A continuing resolution that is at the fiscal year 2023 levels is the only way forward.
Well, the Democrats want to shut it down, so when you shut it down, you have to do layoffs. So we'd be laying off a lot of people that are going to be very affected, and the Democrats, they're going to be Democrats. As you know, this country, no country can afford to pay for illegal immigration, health care for everybody that comes into the country, and that's what they're insisting. And obviously I have an obligation to not accept that. That would affect everybody. And so we're doing well as a country, so the last thing we want to do is shut it down. But a lot of good can come down from shutdowns. We can get rid of a lot of things that we didn't want, and they'd be Democrat things, but they want open borders. They want men playing in women's sports. They want transgender for everybody. They never stop, and they don't learn. We won an election in a landslide. They just don't learn. So we have no choice. I have to do that for the country. Yes.
First government shutdown in nearly 7 years. Yes, this is happening. It officially began at midnight because lawmakers and President Trump failed to reach a deal. Both sides are now in a bitter fight over spending priorities and blaming the other. According to one estimate, up to 750,000 workers could be furloughed every day, costing them $400 million in pay every day.
Usually these shutdowns get headed off because one side blinks or there's a last-minute agreement, but this time neither of those things happened. And so as of this morning, the federal government is technically out of cash. How long will it last? No one knows.
After Congress failed to reach a deal last night, tens of thousands of federal workers will be told to stay home today, furloughed without pay. Workers deemed essential, like air traffic controllers and members of the military, will stay on the job, though they won't get paid for now either.
Most TSA officers live paycheck to paycheck.
Aaron Barker works for TSA in Atlanta.
If it gets to that point where officers can't afford to come in or have to make a decision whether to purchase medication, pay daycare, or put gas in the car to come to work, they're going to have to make that hard decision, and no one really wants to do that.
But they may have to, because late last night, a funding bill did not pass the Senate. It needed 8 Democrats. It got 3.
You know, the only real victim here is the American people. This is so unnecessary and uncalled for.
Democrats were holding out for an extension of Obamacare premium subsidies and changes to Medicaid.
Our guarantee is to the American people that we're going to fight as hard as we can for their health care.
President Trump is warning his administration might use the funding lapse to push through more mass layoffs. I asked him about that yesterday.
How many federal workers do you plan to lay off?
Well, we may do a lot, and that's only because of the Democrats.
Later in the Oval Office, he upped the ante, claiming that all the workers who lose their jobs will somehow come from one party.
We'd be laying off a lot of people that are going to be very affected, and they're Democrats. They're going to be Democrats. A lot of good can come down from shutdowns. We can get rid of a lot of things that we didn't want, and they'd be Democrat things.
The uncertainty has left workers like Barker to wonder if their jobs could be on the chopping block.
It's one thing to say, hey, you may not get paid, but then to say you may not get paid forever, we're going to remove you from your job, is a whole nother thing. It's just the worst case scenario.
President Trump continues to taunt Democratic leaders about all this on social media, posting another AI-generated video of House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, which is similar to an earlier one that Jeffries called bigoted. He also posted these photos of their Oval Office meeting on Monday with Trump 2028 hats prominently displayed on his desk. A nod, Tony, to a potential third term that the law does not allow.
I guess my question for Democratic people would be, why is it that that's your priorities? Like, what does your party benefit from, sending all of this money to other countries? Now, mind you as well, the Republicans did just send like $10 billion to Israel, and nobody's talking about that at all in this video here. But at least we were still getting paid. At least government workers were still getting paid when they was doing all of that foolishness and ridiculousness. And you could kind of see, if you look deep enough, why they were doing that. But what benefit does your party get for sending money to Zambia for circumcisions? Whose backyard deals are y'all dealing with to where you need to allocate that much money for that thing? It simply doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, I'll tell you how the
shutdown.
Shutdown.
That's what I want to start with.
The shutdown is going to end, I believe, with air traffic controllers.
So tell us why. The past,
the long shutdown that occurred at the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, it went for 35 days. It was a record length. This was under Trump. What stopped it essentially was air traffic controllers starting to call in sick. Remember, they're not being paid.
Right.
They're under a lot of stress.
They're already overworked. We've seen so many examples. We know
right now they're even more overworked than they were in 2019. Their pay has been stagnant when they were being paid.
And there have been layoffs.
And they're not being paid. And a lot of them are at the end of their ropes in terms of their ability to function. So will a few of them...
60-hour weeks.
60-hour weeks. Will a few of them call in sick? Probably. Are they actually sick? Maybe. Yeah. But all you need is a small percentage to call in sick. And what happens is what happened in January of 2019. There's a cascade effect of delays, flight delays across America. And once you get some delays, more and more delays. And what happened in January of 2019 is passengers started calling their members of Congress. Right. They were so upset. And Wall Streeters.
That's it. So it's people like me visiting my mom, but it's also the G6s,
the private jets also are reliant on the air traffic controllers, and those private jets are also delayed, or they can't take off. and they call in to their members of Congress and their senators, and within hours, Trump ended that shutdown, and he didn't get what he wanted. He did not get funding for his wall.
Like I said, there's a lot of questions that I would have for people that are Democrats. If you're somebody who is a Democrat, no judgment, but defend your viewpoints down in the comments below, because I genuinely don't understand why this is a thing. I genuinely don't understand why you want to send all of our tax money out of the country. Now, mind you, this country was founded on a 2% tax. Now here in 2025, I'm pretty sure we're at 35-40%, and then that same tax money is getting sent outside of the country for stupidness. So I don't know, but hey guys, look, that's all I got for this video. If you like the video, like, comment, subscribe. Best way to help out the channel is to watch another one of the videos that you see popping up on the screen right now. Get you guys on the next one. Peace.